Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to zoom in on just one single day, Tuesday, February 10th, 2026. Now, why that day? Because what happened on that ordinary Tuesday tells a hidden story about our economy, a story of two completely different realities happening at the exact same time.
So here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at the big warning signs flashing in the background. Then we're diving into the massive bets that big corporations are making on AI and how that clashes with what everyday consumers are going through. We'll see where these two worlds collide, and then we'll connect it all back to how it affects you. All right, let's jump in.
Okay, first up, let's just set the scene for the day. You know, on February 10th, if you were looking at the headlines, you'd get the sense that the whole economy was kind of walking a tightrope.
To start, everyone was holding their breath for the new jobs report. And the forecast? Just 55,000 new jobs. I mean, that number is so small, so dangerously close to zero, that White House officials were already out there trying to manage expectations, basically telling everybody, hey, don't freak out if it looks like we're slamming on the brakes.
And at the same time, the US dollar was getting weaker. Now, you can think of the dollar's strength as kind of a global vote of confidence. So when it starts to slip, it's a sign that big investors around the world are getting a little nervous about the US economy, and they're starting to look for safer places to put their money.
But honestly, the number that really tells the story is this one. On this very day, the New York Fed announced that American credit card debt had soared to a new, mind-boggling record, $1.28 trillion. And let's be clear, this isn't about people buying fancy cars. This is a huge sign that a lot of folks are swiping their credit cards just to get by.
So you've got a nervous public, you've got some shaky economic signals. You'd think big companies would be playing it safe, right? Tightening their belts? Well, no. In fact, one half of the economy was doing the exact opposite. They were making a massive historic bet on the future.
So on a recent earnings call, you had Alphabet's CFO, Anat Ashkenazi, telling investors they wanted to be fiscally responsible. Sounds pretty sensible, doesn't it? But what the company was actually doing on this very day tells a completely different story.
Yep, behind the scenes, on February 10th, Alphabet was putting the finishing touches on a massive $30 billion debt sale. And why? To help bankroll a planned spending spree of up to $185 billion for the year. And almost all of that cash was going to one thing: building out its AI infrastructure. So much for fiscally responsible. This was a full-on, all-in bet.
And get this, Alphabet is not even close to being alone here. This table really shows you the insane scale of this AI gold rush. The biggest of the big tech companies, the hyperscalers like Amazon, Meta, and Microsoft, they're on track to spend a combined staggering $700 billion in 2026. They are borrowing and spending like there's no tomorrow to build, well, tomorrow.
But while the tech giants are borrowing billions to build some far-off future, what's going on with the companies that sell things to us, like right now? This, my friends, is where the story completely splits in two.
And this slide just captures that split perfectly. Look on one side, you've got Spotify. Their stock jumped 15% because they added a ton of new users. So people are still willing to pay for digital stuff, for entertainment. But then look at the other side, a household staple like Coca-Cola. They reported weak revenue, and they straight up blamed it on a falling demand from what they called budget-conscious shoppers. And this tension, this split, it's not just hiding in spreadsheets. No, on this day it was literally erupting into open warfare, with companies fighting tooth and nail for their piece of a market that is clearly feeling the strain.
First up, a big fight in retail. The luxury brand Estee Lauder actually sued Walmart. They accused the retail giant of, and this is a quote, the despicable sale of fake high-end products. We're talking fake La Mer and Tom Ford on its online marketplace.
Then you've got a brawl in healthcare. A company called Hims & Hers got forced to pull its new, cheaper copycat version of the super popular weight loss drug Wegovy. And why? Because it was facing legal threats left and right for, again, another quote, duping the American public. And over in the media world, a corporate dogfight was escalating. Paramount upped its hostile, all-cash takeover bid for Warner Bros. Discovery. Now, this wasn't a friendly merger. A hostile takeover is exactly what it sounds like. It was a brutal battle for control, and it just shows you the level of desperation and consolidation happening in that industry.
Okay, so we've got all this corporate drama, all these market jitters, but how does any of this actually connect back to real people, to your wallet?
Well, on this day in Washington, the political rhetoric was getting pretty hot over a potential government shutdown, this time of the Department of Homeland Security. Senator Ron Johnson accused Democrats of trying to make it impossible for ICE to do its job, turning a budget fight into a much bigger ideological battle. And while those fights are raging in D.C., here is a direct, real-world consequence. Court records on this day showed that more than 83,000 public servants, we're talking teachers, firefighters, librarians, are just stuck. They're stuck in a massive backlog, waiting for over a year for a simple decision on the student loan forgiveness they earned through their service.
And that brings us right back to that record-breaking credit card debt. In fact, the researchers who put out that report, they used a very specific term for what they're seeing. They called it a K-shaped economy. And it's a perfect visual, right? Imagine the letter K. One arm is shooting up, that's the people who are doing great, but the other arm is pointing down, and that represents the groups, especially lower-income families, who are really struggling and falling further behind.
But you know what? It wasn't all bad news. On the very same day, a story out of Florida showed a little glimmer of how that innovation economy we talked about can actually help people. A new bipartisan law there created the country's very first state-funded program to offer free, cutting-edge genetic testing to newborns. It's a really cool sign that real progress is possible, even with all the noise.
So let's step back for a second. When you put all these different puzzle pieces from this one single day together, the anxiety, the huge corporate bets, the consumer pain, the political fights, what's the big picture? What story does it all tell?
Well, the picture that comes into focus is this tale of two economies, literally moving in opposite directions at the same time. You've got the innovation economy, borrowing hundreds of billions to build an AI-powered future, and then you have the foundation economy, where most of us actually live, taking on record debt just to stay afloat, cutting back on the basics, and waiting for help that's stuck somewhere in the system.
And that leaves us with a really big, really important question. This split, this divergence, it's not some prediction for the future. It's happening right now, on any given Tuesday. So as one economy is busy building the world of tomorrow, is the foundation that the rest of us are standing on starting to crack? Based on the events of just one day, that's a question we really can't afford to ignore.